Hello everyone and welcome. Sit back, relax, make a cup of tea or whatever you like to drink and get ready for new stories from Yellow Cat. Send your own favorite stories in the comments below and maybe they'll be in our new video. So subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed yet. Let's get started. What is the most insignificant amount of power you've seen get to someone's head? My friend went on to become a manager. It was a peculiar kind of thing. I could go into a lengthy TLDR about how we became friends, but that's not what this is about. Assume that I knew him as a teenager and that we had been friends for over 10 years, during which time his entire family also joined us. Rather, I'll jump ahead to how I ended up working under him at work after a series of department reorganizations. I was completely ignorant. He used a lot of crass psychological tricks and tactics in his management style. They included took me to lunch so they could bounce some ideas off of me. Rather, it was a criticism of the caliber of my work. I went through 5 management changes during the 8 months of that job situation with all the restructuring that took place in 3 stages. I had completed one project, taken over another, or started a new one, but I had never had the time to complete all 3. On occasion, we're canceling/giving away your previous projects and giving you these others. I therefore lacked a workflow to support anything. He only observed that you never finish anything and always seemed to be panicking trying to discover documentation. He claimed he took me out to dinner in a public setting so I wouldn't cause a scene, but he also hinted that he might abandon me there if I raised too much of an objection. I've never caused a scene at work and I never will. It's not professional to do that. Made numerous remarks about how far behind my skill level. My comment that being on call around the clock and having to do all these 4 a.m. installs was impacting my family life was the best of these kinship life. I know someone who can get root access into any operating system, diagnose, troubleshoot, and fix any application, even ones he hasn't seen before and doesn't have any documentation, and his name is Bob. Do you whine about your family situation? He has 2 young boys. He puts in 12-hour days at work and works 2 weekends a month, but I never hear him moan. To which I said, well, maybe he should. I asked Bob later if any of that was accurate. No, he snorted. Really? I can do that, he thinks? Man, I want a raise. F. How twat. Hey, listen, my boss thinks I can diagnose anything in the known universe, he joked later in a meeting. A previously unheard OS? I have root access and can diagnose any problem. I can't be stopped. Later, when I asked my boss about this, she became irate and told me that it was not meant to be taken literally. Without any backup plan, he let go of a lot of people. I was left with projects that nobody wanted in the end. Frequently employed my family as a prop to instill guilt. You want my son and wife to know that you made a mistake like that? In that case, would they be proud of you, Mr. Dad? He also turned the private history we shared on one another against me, constantly made threats of a layoff, acting as though my termination was certain. You work as a Unix administrator for like $60K a year? You claim that's less than what the majority of people pay. I immediately began my job searching again. I turned down an offer of $70K from someone who had lowballed me. I could leave this company and get a job working for $10K more than I get now easy, I said during a heated argument. In return, he laughed in my face at what I believe he took to be a bluff. Are you serious? Would some idiot give you $70K for your abilities? H, if I were you, I would accept it. It'd be a simple task for anyone stupid enough to attempt it. It's foolish of you to refuse it, oh my. A week later, that location gave me a follow-up call and extended an offer that exceeded my initial budget, indicating their desperation. I promise you, it's much more than $60K or $70K. I agreed as a result. I accepted and gave my 2 weeks' notice as soon as I received my official offer letter. It was dead on the heels of my ex-girlfriend turned boss dropping a real stink bomb of a botched project on me. He was angry. I was jumping ship and stabbing him in the back, and he wanted to know why in the world. I decided that using a more passive-aggressive approach would have been more professional than yelling, "Because you're a meanie head." You said that I should take advantage of any company that's foolish enough to pay me more than I do here. Considering that you frequently travel to India and other places, I took that to be a hint. I took it that you were trying to tell me that the department as a whole was going to be outsourced, so I left for my next job. Will significantly lessen the pain of firing me. So how have the past 2 weeks gone? I'll work with you like a canine. I tried, but HR kept giving me the runaround, and you are in charge of hiring your replacement, so they better be good. In the end, they hired an internal candidate who could be paid even less than me. She lived for 4 months. In the end, he didn't assign me any work, so I spent most of my free time on the internet when I wasn't turning in projects. I was supposed to have my badge and pager confiscated on the last day I worked there, but he called in sick, so his boss took care of it instead. She was really perplexed. Are you heading out? Oh my god. After that, not only did our friendship end, but his marriage also failed. He was abusing his wife, which was another factor that convinced me he had become a scumbag. He turned into a power tripper unlike anything else. 8 years later, I ran into him at an event that his current employer was also hosting. He had aged poorly and shed a lot of weight. At least he was professional then, because even though he looked awful, he was friendly to me as if nothing had ever gone wrong between us. We said our goodbyes after I returned the favor, and we both caught up on our family's news. My then ex-boyfriend's ex-wife worked at the same store where I did when I was a retail employee, and after about 6 months, she was promoted from sales associate to lead sales associate. This basically meant that she had to read the sales charts aloud and check the walkie-talkie once every hour to let people know if they had met their target. She went about editing sales that I had made and giving them to the house because she hated me because my boyfriend had dumped her and started dating me. Sales go to the house when no associate helped the customer. She would then openly deny it to me until I told the manager, at which point they witnessed her in action. Unfortunately, they still kept her on but fired her a few months later because she was crazy and had a mental breakdown and threw the hanger rack across the store at another associate. Redditors who got back at the Homeowners Association / Karen neighbors, how did it go? Had the HOA president as a neighbor in our townhomes. I'm a chef, so we enjoyed grilling. I make use of charcoal. According to city code, you must grill at least 15 feet away from the residence according to the handbook. I turned 30. Every time we did something, there were still complaints about us breaking the rules. She claimed that we were using an outdated version of the handbook when I showed her the current one. When I requested an updated copy, I was told that it would be too expensive to print out new copies for everyone, and that I would have to just take her word for it. I told her to get a new copy or kick a rock right away. She reported us to the fire department and they verified that I complied with their code. Then, in an effort to diffuse the tension, I began to grill over the property line in the nearby park, which was about 50 feet away from where we were allowed to do so by city code. She would stroll by, snap photos, and inform us that she intended to bring them to the city council for review of the municipal codes. I threatened to file for a restraining order if she harassed me again. We rented, most people didn't, so I reported her to my landlord and I never heard from her again. When it came up at the HOA meeting, according to my neighbor, they told her to leave it alone and that there would be no votes to change the policy. Ever since then, we've seen her with icy glares. We moved a year or two later, and she boldly requested a private showing as the landlord decided to sell, and she wanted to check it out before it went on the market. I told her it was against the rules and told that petty bee to F off. I had to relocate from my house in Idaho to Arizona. We opted to lease the Obama-era market because it was terrible. Acquired a land manager. For 2 years after the couple moved in, we heard nothing negative about the property. Then the guy lost his job, and they didn't get paid for several months. The landlord was kicked out. This is not where the bad neighbor story starts yet. Keep reading. It was then that I discovered they had been residing with children in the basement. The fact that it's not rated for living and the possibility of getting trapped in a fire infuriated me. You can only imagine how unhappy I was to learn that the children meant goats. It also appears that they did a poor job of cleaning up the scat. Continue reading to find out where the story of the nasty neighbors begins. We make the decision to visit the house and assess what maintenance may be required. The landowner declared it to be okay. As we proceed, the entire yard's appearance has altered. In addition, I built the granite rock wall in the backyard myself. It seems that they chose to use the entire amount as filler to expand my yard, taking up the garden area. Alright. Enter the house. The oak floor in the entrance area appeared to have been scraped by a dog or possibly a horse. 6 of the 10 light switch covers were either missing, cracked, or partially detached but still attached. The floor, which was tile and had an expensive tile warmer underneath, appeared as though a bowling ball had been dropped on it. In the center of the floor is a spiderweb shatter pattern. Yes, the hole was perfectly fine. This is not where the bad neighbor story starts yet. Keep reading. After spending $10,000 on repairs, I made the decision to refinish my oak floors myself over the course of a long weekend in order to save some money. Industrial sandmaker, completed. Mop, and then some more, completed. As I was coming and going from my house to complete the different steps of stripping and restanding the floor, on the west side of my driveway, I noticed that my tree line appeared somewhat differently. It seemed strange, but it didn't really register. Then, after the second stain, I went outside and at last realized that something about my trees was unquestionably and steadily changing. Of them, half were absent. I went to examine the 8-inch stumps. There had been a poisoning. Damp poisoning. I thought, what? I enter, reapply stain, and then exit to take a breather. WTAF, more trees are absent. After an hour of me sitting there, the neighbor next door comes over and uses a hacksaw. What are you doing to my trees, I ask you. Who are you, he asked. The owner is me. Oh. Taking a step back, he said. Who gave you permission to take down my trees? Well, I asked the landowner if I could prune back your trees so they wouldn't annoy me. Did you tell the landlord that your idea of tree trimming is to remove the tree entirely and then poison the stump? I asked. No. I said, I'll send you a bill for the going rate for a tree that size, and you and the landlords can agree on who should foot the bill for this giant error. In the end, the bill came to about $30,000. I obtained $40,000 in damages after suing the tenants. Neighbors upstairs, a cooperative couple in their 60s. Before I met my current wife and she eventually moved in, I got along well with them. Everything was fine. I think the reason they were irritated, especially the husband, was that my wife is Asian and I'm white. He soon began acting strangely, such as when my wife took our dog for a walk while their dog was already outside and then apologized to her. Later, it got really serious. On a Saturday morning at around 10 a.m., my wife's relatives from back home were speaking to her on a Zoom call during an aunt's wake. When the man from upstairs rang our bell while I was asleep, my wife went to answer it and saw that Joe was there. He then began banging on our windows. He was standing there, staring in when my wife went to open the windows and blinds. He said nothing and walked back upstairs. He tried to play it off as though he was checking on us to see if we were okay since he had not seen us in a while when I called and asked what the H he was doing. When I told BS that he had my number and could call me, he told me to screw myself. He also attempted to report us to the HOA even though we had broken no rules. Then, packages would be kicked off our shared stoop and land in the dirt or bushes, or mail would be tampered with, opened, and then put back. I went to the property manager and requested that she check the cameras, but she was unable to do so. She said I could install a doorbell camera, so I did. When the guy licked my doorbell after returning from a trip out of state during the height of the flu, I went to her every time something new happened, but she never followed up until I showed it to the HOA board president who happened to be in our office. I also went to the neighborhood police station, but they wouldn't accept the report. I had to buy my wife a body-worn camera that captured him following and yelling obscenities at her while she attempted to walk the dog, all while he was harassing her and the HOA was unaware of it. All of this information was recorded and sent to the HOA's lawyer. As he lived above us and doesn't technically own real property, all we could do was wait for him to make accusations against us, which I knew he would do. They then informed him that his behavior was inappropriate and that he would have to sell his apartment if it persisted. They listed the property for sale when it became apparent he couldn't control himself, but they were unable to close until they had paid thousands of dollars in fines and legal fees for his action toward us, which he discovered a week before the property was to be sold. They eventually moved, but not before he attempted to attack a landscaper who was employed there, and the police officer who had responded to the scene was hurled to the ground and threatened with arrest if he did not go inside. He was quite laid back after that until they moved out. 3 days before they moved in, his wife asked us for a truce and made several attempts to apologize on his behalf. I told her we had never done anything wrong and that all we had ever wanted, something I told them multiple times when I confronted him, was to be left alone. Well, they've left and things are better now. They did more, but this is getting too long. Thank you for subscribing, the likes, and comments. We're very happy to see you all in the comments too. Thanks for your support.